Home. The word alone brings everyone a sense of familiarity and comfort. A place that to each of us is personal, but at the same time something we can all relate to. The place we grew up, had many, if not most of our childhood memories. The ultimate safe zone, where we can relax and truly be ourselves, finding comfort in the walls, protecting us from the outside world. But for one family, that safety was taken from them by someone. A person who seemed to know more about the newly acquainted house than a realtor would ever hope to know. A person who had a commitment to watching the massive 6-bedroom residence at 657 Boulevard. And a person who would prove to be one of the most elusive people in recent decades. This is the true story of an individual who still remains unknown. A person who had made life for one family a living hell, caused the community to panic, and got the internet to lose their minds over who really is the Watcher. The story begins one evening in June of 2014, when newly acquired homeowners Derek and Maria Broaddus were busy renovating their new home that they had recently begun the steps of moving into. After another day of getting things closer to how they wanted their dream home to be, Derek stepped outside to go and check the mail. The normal things were in there: bills, promotional brochures, and the like. But with this bundle of sealed envelopes, there was one that stood out. No clear piece on the side that displayed their address and name, nor any recognizable postage or symbol anywhere on the outside of the letter. Instead, there, in handwritten lettering, addressed, "The New Owners." A bit puzzled by the anonymity of the letter, Derek proceeded to tear open the envelope, and doing so, was about to set off a series of motions that would become the Broaddus' nightmare. The letter read as following.
Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched it in the 1960s. It is now my time. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I counted. Are there more on the way? Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all of the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin. The Watcher.
Welcoming neighbors truly are a blessing, aren't they? Free babysitters, them letting you borrow their lawnmower, admiring your young blood you bring to the new home. Truly a blessing. Like any sane person would have done, once Derek finished the letter, he immediately reacted by calling the police and getting the hell out of the house while he waited. The arriving officer read the letter. While he was puzzled, he told Derek this could be nothing but a sick prank or possible dare by one of the kids in the neighborhood, but that he would look into it more. He questioned Derek, asking if he had any enemies or made any rivals while bidding on the house, but truthfully, Derek had neither. After informing his wife Maria, the couple contacted the previous homeowners because of a very particular part of the letter that stated,
I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened.
The Woods the Watcher is referring to are the previous homeowners, John and Andrea Woods, and from here, the mystery only deepens. The Woods told the Broadduses that they in fact received a letter from the Watcher a few days before they moved out, but simply brushed it off to either something foolish or an innocent address and threw it away. They had never gotten any type of letter like this in the over 2 decades of living at 657 Boulevard. Realizing this was going to be a dead end, at least for now, Derek and Maria could only sit and wait until either police made a break in the case, or wait for another letter to arrive. Fortunately, or rather unfortunately, they wouldn't have to wait very long. 2 weeks after the first letter arrived, Maria was at the house going through some things and moving boxes while watching her kids like a hawk and making sure they didn't move out of earshot. Going outside to check the mail, Maria's blood ran cold as she saw a very familiar letter. Not taking any chances, she contacts the police, and when they arrive, they read the following.
Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy. I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found out what is in the walls yet? In time they will. I'm pleased to know your names now and the names of the young blood you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. I noticed one of your children using an easel. Is she the artist in the family? Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is very far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedroom facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession, and now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching.
At this point, Maria was terrified. The Watcher now specifically targeting and making the focus of this second letter on her children. She stopped bringing them around the new house, as the details the Watcher gave not only made her skin crawl, but told her that he or she was closer than she could have imagined. Small details from the letter stood out to the police, one being when the Watcher addressed one of the children painting.
I noticed one of your children using an easel. Is she the artist in the family?
And how the view of where the easel was on the front porch was actually blocked by bushes from the front street, so the only way you could see it is that if you were beside the house. A piece of information that did not make the Broadduses feel safe at all. Adding to the dread was that the Watcher specifically called the children by their nicknames. Not real names, but a personal nickname. Ones that only those close to them would know. This meant one of 2 things. The Watcher was someone the family knew, albeit unlikely, or, more concerning, was that the house was either bugged, or the Watcher truly was that physically close to the home that he or she could hear these things. A few days later, a third letter arrived.
Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. The house is crying from all of the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed the halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old. So did my father, but he kept watching it until the day he died, and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again.
Putting a complete halt on the moving in stage, the family stayed with Maria's parents while they waited this ordeal out. But no leads were forming, and any possible suspect wasn't able to be tied to the letters. Frustrated by the lack of any sort of closure or answer, Derek began his own investigation into the matter and started with the closest thing to the actual house, the next-door neighbors. The Langfords were an old family with roots in the community. The family consisted of Mother Peggy Langford and several of her children. While all of them were middle-aged at this point, they all still lived in the same house. The son, however, that stood out was Michael Langford, a 60-year-old man who was a bit of a recluse and described as a harmless but odd man. The entire neighborhood knew of the family, and that they weren't the most outgoing of people, but they never really caused any issues. Yet the fact that their house did sit right next to the Broadduses was enough for Derek to target his sights on them. To Derek, Michael was the Watcher, and he was going to prove it. But before he was even able to get this chance, law enforcement had beaten Derek to it, as they had already interviewed Michael Langford and dismissed him as a suspect. They knew he seemed to fit the profile, but they had no evidence linking him, and everything else was simply circumstantial. Things did not get any easier on the Broaddus family. Derek began suffering from insomnia and depression. Maria was diagnosed with PTSD. The kids were asking questions as to why they hadn't moved into the new house yet. The financial strain of having the money tied into the house was weighing on them, and still, no progress was being made. Does Derek risk it and move in his family and put the safety of them in jeopardy? Or does he stall and wait and continue the current stalemate he was in? Both options seemed horrible, yet they were the only options they had. Every option they thought would have turned up something didn't. The police told Derek after they interviewed Michael that the letters would stop. They didn't. They thought not going to the house would stop them. They didn't. They figured moving past it and just continuing with renovations would stop them. But alas, they didn't. Realizing there was only one move to play, and that being to solve this mystery, Derek hired his own private investigator and began in turn digging up information on the surrounding neighbors, seeing if anyone had motive for writing those letters. Perhaps it was jealousy, or financially driven. Maybe they didn't like their kids, or had a prior history with Maria or her family. She had grown up in the area after all, a few minutes away from 657 Boulevard, yet all leads turned up nothing. I am not going to waste time talking about suspects that were of little interest or had little credit to their ties to being involved. The problem was that the Watcher was so mysterious, which made it practically impossible to identify the person. The list of suspects ranged from, of course, the neighbors, the Langfords, a teenage kid who was seen snooping around the neighborhood, prior buyers interested in the house, former work colleagues of Derek, old flames of Maria, and the list goes on and on into obscurity. After poring over the letters over and over and over again, Derek had an idea. His money was still on the Langfords, Michael specifically being behind it. So, with help from a specific part of one of the letters mentioning the following, he devised a plan.
657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone.
Derek devised a plan to see once and for all if the Langfords were truly behind this madness. The family sent a letter to the Langfords, informing them that they were going to be demolishing the house to get a response from one of them. Surely, with the Watcher being so passionate about the house, talks of destroying it would send them into a frenzy. Yet, nothing happened. No response was given, and not even a single letter from the Watcher was received. At a loss, the Broadduses accepted defeat after 6 months, and officially put 657 Boulevard back on the market. With this came a slew of other issues. Legal ones the family had to figure out. The news about the home and the letters made their way around the town. Everyone knew about it, and nobody was remotely curious about living in a house that came with its very own personal Watcher. It got so bad that the Broadduses were obligated to show any person interested in buying the house the letters as a forewarning, and like a domino effect, every one of the potential buyers seemed to lose interest after reading the letters. It stayed that way for almost 2 years. Every lead led nowhere, every buyer backed out, and the entire story had made its way online and the internet ate it up. People were accusing the Broadduses of attempting a scam or buyer's remorse to get out of the house without taking a financial hit. Others were saying it's nothing but a pot stir to incite media attention and lead to a movie or TV deal. And then there were the ones who called the family cowards for letting a few letters stop them from living in their dream home. All in all, the words from the keyboard warriors were cruel, and few had any form of positivity behind them. Things seemed lost for the family. But that was when their real estate lawyer made a proposal to sell the land and have them split up the property into 2 homes. They would seem to break even financially, and the entire home would cease to exist, an idea that Derek didn't hate. But as many great ideas, there were a few speed bumps. Actually, in this case, it was more like a brick wall that completely stopped the process from moving forward, as the request for making the property for 2 smaller homes was denied by the planning board, as they stated that regulations mandated the properties be a minimum of 70-foot lots, and the 2 homes would reach 67 feet, a mere 3 feet shy of the minimum, and in the face of years of psychological abuse the family had suffered, meant nothing to the board, as the rejection was not up for debate. Adding insult to injury, later that year, the same board approved a house in the neighborhood that required an even larger exception of square footage than 657 would have needed. This was the last straw. Beaten and out of choices, the family had no choice but to rent out the home. They weren't going to live there, and the reputation they had over them made them not even want to live in the area anymore. The new renter of the house was given a legal document that granted them permission to back out of the lease if they received any letter from the watcher and not face a legal repercussion. And of course, the watcher struck again and sent a 4th letter during this time. And this time, the watcher was far from happy. In fact, the watcher was seething.
Violent winds and bitter cold. To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me. One of those so-called neighbors who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and you are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher! Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away, but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break.
Being that the Watcher's tone changed a bit, Derek did what at this point was a routine. He took the letter to police, and as no surprise, no closure was found. Law enforcement did their best, but in the end, nothing came of it, and beyond the point of defeat, Derek left the past, or attempted to, behind him, and tried picking up the pieces and moving on with his family to a sense of normalcy. But before that, a series of different letters began arriving at the doors of other residents in the neighborhood. The letters stemmed of anger, resentment, and frustration, words of a person who had not just been pushed to the limit, but also lived with the constant threat looming over his family, his children, the mother of those children. That kind of anger could seemingly only stem from one person, a person who fit all criterias. The writer was in fact Derek, and while he admitted shame and guilt for sending them, he justified sending the letters because of the lack of any form of closure or resolution from this nightmare that he lived with, and honestly, I don't blame the man one bit. Nothing happened to Derek over the letters he had sent, and the Watcher's letters still to this day remain a mystery. Nobody is sure who sent them, and the damage left in its path is hard at times to read, to see the family's life so uprooted and abused. The one bright side to all of this was that in July of 2019, 657 Boulevard was finally sold, and while the Broadduses took a loss, the The constant nightmare they endured was finally able to be put behind them, as it was no longer their burden.
At 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey, the stately 3,900 square foot home boasting 6 bedrooms, 4 baths.
February, shortly after the Broaduses started renting the house to tenants, a fourth and apparently even scarier letter has arrived. This according to a new brief filed in the lawsuit.
In the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Why are you here? I will find out.
What letters, Bill, frightened a young family, the Broaduses, into filing suit after scrambling in fear from the dream home they'd only just bought? That home, 657 Boulevard, sits silent, as do local officials such as Westfield.
Now with a new threat from the stalker known as the Watcher, who's been haunting the owners of the New Jersey home, sent a new letter as well. Their lawyer says this one is more sinister than the others.
Their dream home, but as soon as they bought it, they say they started receiving menacing letters like this. All of the windows and doors allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house, and I watch and wait for the day the young blood will be mine again. After receiving the threat in an interview with New York Magazine last year, Derek comparing the ordeal to cancer, saying we think about it every day.
They wanted to get rid of the house because they knew it was going to be this burden. They knew they weren't going to move in. From there, the next thing they want more than anything is to know who did this.
The only question to ask now is, when will the Watcher write again? Are they still keeping an eye on the house they love so dearly? And if so, what would stop them from going past a simple letter, to instead making an unexpected visit to 657 Boulevard?
Well, that was creepy as hell. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, consider, I'm sorry, 1 second.
Better. Consider liking and subscribing. Again, thank you very much for Thank you for watching the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Stay safe out there, friends. Good night.